Environmentalism. It is the second half of a two-part youth panel discussion. I am the moderator, Siana Dalto, a member of the CDF Emancipation Creative Committee. Thank you for joining us for a second time, and also thank you to those who are joining for the first time. Today I am joined in studio by three amazing and brilliant youth. I'll introduce them, or for some of you I'll be reintroducing them. So to my immediate right I have Faith Regis, who is a Cape Literature scholar. She topped not only St. Lucia but the Caribbean in Cape Literature last year, and she has Cape certificates in literature, sociology, and law. Right now, for her work, she is a third-generation educator within her family. Next to Faith, we have Shan Peter, who is a past student of Cape Literature, History, and Law. He's also a writer and a well-decorated debater. To my extreme right, we have Krista Saint-Ange, who is a public author, a history enthusiast, an activist, and very many things under the sun. Although she is not joined with us in studio, we also were supposed to have Lenora Agdoma, who could not join us for reasons beyond her control. But she is an excellent student of the sciences who works in agriculture now, and she would have been very useful to our discussion today. So we'll be jumping right into the questions and answers, and if it's anything like yesterday, today will be a very phenomenal discussion. I'm positive that you all will enjoy. All right, so how do you think, that was something that was mentioned yesterday, how do you think that the characterization of the Caribbean as paradise coincides with colonial perceptions of the New World?
Paradise. Listen to that word, paradise. I think we see it thrown around a lot. And mind me if I make it more conversational, but I enjoyed our discussion yesterday so very much. And it's almost like we're, all three of us, despite our specialties, we're almost on the same wavelength, but with contributions that are very unique to our specialties. When you hear something like Paradise and St. Lucia, it's almost synonymous, especially for us, because we kind of, from our inception, from our understanding, we kind of know that we live where you vacation and all of those things. And with the colonial context, I think this transitionary period between being under colonial rule and whatever it is that we are right now, it would seem kind of seamless, but I don't think that colonial ties have ever been stripped, even if in the most obvious ways they're no longer here. We discussed it yesterday, the 7 times British, 7 times French, and the connection between, we use those things as identifiers for our national and cultural identity. We use things like the Twin Peaks, and it's these select handful of things that we keep going back to. I think in my thinking about it also, in the absence of a colonial power, well, obviously, because they're still back there somewhere working strings among our economy. Who said that? Who said that? In the absence of that obvious, okay, we're capitalizing all of these industries, we kind of almost metaphorically had to take over that colonization we had to grab that boot, and in order to kind of catch up with the world, we needed to start doing stuff like, I don't want to call it exploiting, but using our environment, using our resources. And we're not as privileged as a lot of other places in the world. Call them privileged, but exploitation. Anyway, as some other places in the world who have, the natural resources is this. Even if it's finite, stuff like gold, and they have coal and all of those things, they pull oil and then they generate their income from that. But all we know is what we saw, and we saw that we have all this beautiful land around us. We spoke about it yesterday. We may not have been the original inhabitants of the land, we were brought here, but we see from what we were used as labor for, we see that this is income generating, and in order to kind of catch up with the world, we sell those things. So whether that's the banana industry, in other places the sugarcane industry, we see tourism, 7 times British, 7 times French, a Helen of the West Indies, the only land to ever have, to be named by a woman, the 99 beaches, or a beach for every day, a river for every day in the year, those things, we use that now. And in some sense, it's almost like colonization, though we're emancipated, we still have this tie to colonization, whether we're the colonizers now. That's maybe we can delve into that later on, but that's where just to kick it off, that's where my mind continues to go.
Right. And to just add some very quick context, I could be subject to correction because this was something that I wrote a very long time ago, maybe last year, but just to help some people who may not be aware as to why, specifically the concept of paradise. St. Lucia is not really paradise to the persons who are from there. Paradise normally suggests that you're coming from an outside, probably where you feel a bit miserable, and you make your way to a land that is almost like saturated and it's abundant and it has fruits and women, women, ... And yes, and actually the wood, I think, became very popular around the Romantic period, which I think came in response to industrialization in Europe. So
right.
Yes.
So I want to talk about so many things, jumping off of points Krista made and points you made. So I would like to start off by saying I find it ironic that the Caribbean, St. Lucia, is categorized kind of as a paradise, because when you think about it, when I was doing sociology, one of the things that really stuck with me was the concept of having a periphery and having a metropolis. So you would think that living in the periphery, it would never be categorized as a paradise, because when you come from the metropolis, and when I say that, I mean countries which are considered first world countries and countries like here which are considered third world countries. For some reason, the people from the first world countries always seek an escape, as if third world countries who really push tourism are sort of their backyard where they can go and play and where they can go and live out their wildest imaginations, things they would never do in their own countries. They come to live out these dreams here and kind of have some type of bacchanal. And I find it really funny because, just like you said, it's not a paradise here. We still live in the third world, no matter how it's marketed on an international scale. And it's almost like you put in wallpaper on a house that has mold on it. Like, there are so many social problems, there are so many socio-economic problems plaguing the people who actually live there, plaguing the people who work in the tourism industry. Things that are deep-rooted, things that I've seen in my own profession, like children who are in households where they face neglect because of the hours their parents work to satisfy tourists who come to the hotels. All of these things, people who are being pushed out of their fishing villages for enterprise, and all of that is somehow overshadowed. But what I would like to say, according to what Krista said, in terms of us having to start off somewhere, having to push off the wall, like when you swim, I feel like the Caribbean people kind of hold the title of being from a paradise close to home, because like she said, we don't have gold, we don't have silver, we don't have anything. So having the beauty of the island is like the only thing we can really boast about. Even having fantastic figures who come from St. Lucia, even then it's almost as if all of these people were there before you, and then after a while, when the generations pass, you sort of lose the meaning of these things. Like having 2 Nobel laureates, it's almost as if back then it would have meant something to the people who were there at that time, but now you were not there when it happened, so you don't really feel the same sense of national pride. But I guess, like in this day and age, again with Julia and Alfred, she's like bringing more things for us to boast about, so we can kind of take the focus off of the paradise, off of the physical beauty of the island, and actually bring it into our human resource.
Our accomplishment.
Yes, we can focus on these things instead. And sometimes I like to think of the Caribbean as a woman.
We'll be getting into that.
Even St. Lucia is the only island named after a woman in the entire world. It's almost as if she has to sell her body to get somewhere. That's what it feels like to me. You have to sell your beaches, you have to sell your land. Yep. You have to sell yourself so you can move forward in life. And the thing is, that's the reality for so many actual women living here who have to take that path. So it's almost like pathetic fallacy. So that's how I feel about the Caribbean, St. Lucia being categorized as a paradise.
And the other thing that's very interesting about the characterization of paradise as well as the feminization of the island is to consider oneself beautiful, you are looking from the outside in, which it has its benefits, but it also has its shortcomings where you are sort of disconcerted, like you're not focusing on what's within, and instead you are literally thinking of yourself as a traveler who is miserable and is searching for beauty and abundance elsewhere. And Sham?
Well, trying to prioritize what I would believe are the external perceptions of the title that are affixed to us, because the title was never constructed based on its inhabitants. I'm sure the slaves weren't regarding the place they were in and the circumstances as paradise. The people that came called it a paradise amidst the suffering of those who were forcibly relocated from what was originally their home. Now, currently, we look at our landscape and we look at the paradise that is being called. And, you know, there was, as Chris had said earlier, the notion that a lot of us have of, you know, I live where you vacation. Yes, there is that in a lot of us. We hear it a lot of the time. But with the New World and as well as the metropolis, as Faith was talking about, their perception of the, not just St. Lucia, but the islands as paradise tends to detract a lot of merit from what else that they are. Because then it's regarded externally and globally as only paradise. It's regarded only as beaches. It's regarded only as rum and dances and fete. It's not taken into full account the culture in it, the music, the people, the community, the aspects of life and heritage, the construction, the difficulties even. Because people coming for vacation, people coming for quote paradise, aren't looking for challenge. They're not looking for things to create difficulties. They're not looking for inconveniences. They're looking for something to be catered to them. So it creates a sense of entitlement where you come to a place that is someone's home and expect it to be treated like it's a hotel room. The road is yours, the house is yours, the beach is yours. Where in that respect, labeling anywhere, not just St. Lucia or the Caribbean, but labeling anywhere as paradise tends to create an imagery, it tends to make it synonymous to only being paradise. It tends to encourage people to lose aspects and lose respect for it in any other regard, where you don't come to St. Lucia and St. Lucia is a pair. It's not somewhere where it's like, it is on par with these other islands. It is the paradise place. You're going there for vacation. You're going there for holiday. You're going there as a reward for good behavior. You're not going there to appreciate culture or to grow or to live. Where these aspects within ourselves, we're making a life here, we have development here, we have self-sufficiency. And of course we do, where I'm looking at our nationals, slowly but surely are realizing and believing it and investing internally. But the negative connotations of the word paradise, which is ironic that it carries such negative connotations, the paradisal plane, as Walcott had called it, it is truly damaging somehow to be referred to as paradise.
And we should never forget the bigger picture, everybody. You need to emancipate yourself. Never forget the bigger picture, that in order to be in order to be considered as paradise, or they consider us as paradise, do you ever understand that them feeling like where they come from is not paradise is specifically and directly caused by the same thing, the economy, capitalism. Sorry, I'm not a sorry. No, literally, all the this exploitation of people, the exploitation of the environment itself, especially because of our discussion on environmentalism. When you take from when you take from nature and you don't adequately give back to it, and you've done that for generations, and it causes this degradation not only to the environment but also to the society, so much so that the people feel, what would be the opposite of paradise? A jail?
A concrete jungle.
A concrete jungle. Where they inhabit is a concrete jungle which you need for your mental health, because it's a mental health vacation they're taking. For your mental health to come down and try and find paradise. It's almost like, and you can pay for that paradise. You bottle up that paradise.
You have to.
You have to do it. It's almost like this perpetuation. And the fact that they can buy this, and then we notice that there's this demand for it because of the same capitalistic system that we're living in. There is this demand and they can buy it. It's almost like, because you're superior and you label yourself as superior and you've used us in order to reach those heights, and now you're stuck in a concrete jungle and you've left us almost in this state of, as you call, underdevelopment, as you call the third world. But now you need us, this you superior, you coming down here, us inferior. And we notice this demand and we're supplying this demand, and even at our deterioration. Faith, you said it, and while you're speaking to both of you are speaking, and you as well, Sienna, is it like, what qualifies something as a paradise? Because yes, we look beautiful, and yes, y'all told us that we are beautiful. You know, they tell us we're beautiful. They've been telling us
the land is beautiful.
Yeah, they tell us we're beautiful. Keep it general for now. They tell us we're beautiful. That would classify paradise. What qualifies paradise? That's paradise to them. And then we look at ourselves and we're like, yes, we're beautiful. Yes, we're beautiful. While somebody's being shot in a community, yes, we're beautiful. Yes, we're beautiful. While so much children are being neglect, abuse, those things. Yes, we're beautiful. Yes, we're beautiful. And our economy is, we're still trying to diversify. What does qualify paradise?
Right. So we have more thoughts coming in the next segment, but just to wrap some things up from this discussion, just for informational purposes, you mentioned third world, which this is not a contention to that characterization, but you know, just for further information's sake, I believe it was Michael Manley, or the name is slipping me right now, but it could be the other Manley from Jamaica. His understanding of that concept would have been formerly colonized countries. But at the same time, we are approaching, St. Lucia in particular, many of the Caribbean islands are approaching middle to high level income. Also, well, I'll touch on my other points when we come to our next segment. So we're taking a break. Please stay with us.
Listen, I am fed up. You're just asking for more information, more information, more information. What is that all about? You know me, Gassa. I do business all the time.
I'm sorry for the inconvenience, sir. But let me explain to you why we request additional information.
More information, manita.
So every year, $2 trillion is laundered through legitimate institutions like this bank.
What that have to do with me?
This laundered money is used to support criminal activity and terrorist activity, and also to finance weapons for mass destruction.
But what that have to do with me putting my money into my account?
Well, because of money laundering, our bank, your bank, is obligated to comply with the International Anti-Money Laundering Regulation.
What's that?
By performing customer due diligence. Essentially just knowing our customers a little better.
You know me.
Your banking patterns and transactions. It's a relationship, and if we fail to comply, the penalties will be severe. Not just for this bank, but for St. Lucia.
If we?
Yes.
I never realized that.
But what's good is that we have an oversight body called NAMLOC.
What's NAMLOC?
The National Anti-Money Laundering Committee. It monitors St. Lucia's compliance with international regulations. The aim is to nip money laundering at its source. You know the old saying, si la pani city wears.
La pani vole.
For further information, contact the Attorney General's Chambers at 468-3200 or visit the National Anti-Money Laundering SLU Facebook page.
Welcome back. I am Sienna Dalto, and we still have with us Faith Regis, Sham Peter, and Krista St. Ange, and in spirit, Lenora Agdoma, who unfortunately could not make it with us today. So one thing I wanted to mention when I gave their bios earlier was that each panelist that we have today is from a rural community. Faith from Lakwa, Sham from Lapwet Shoza, right, and Krista from Moshi. I am not from a rural community. I'm from Egad, Mondador, which is kind of suburban in a sense, and I live currently in Forestier. So we'll be jumping into our next question, which is a bit long-winded, but long-winded questions make for great conversation. So this question goes, the creation story of the Caribbean. It sounds apocalyptic in a way, right? Violent volcanic eruptions, very strong earthquakes, and so on. And all of this is what came to create the mountains and the valleys and the plains that we have all over St. Lucia. So there was a Martinican writer, Suzanne Césaire, who I think she was also a Marxist. She took this as a metaphor to mean that violent and rapid change is room for creation in itself. What do you think about that proposition, and does it ever cross your mind that the fear of apocalypse is for those who benefit most from stability or the status quo?
Okay, so I'd like to give an example of it, because this is something that I've contended with for a while, not necessarily on a large scale as the Caribbean, but I even think I wrote a little on it a while back, where I was thinking about the Castries fire, and I've been to limited places in the Caribbean, but from what I've seen, while we lament the Castries fire, I feel like purity can be forged through fire. And what I mean by that is our city burned down twice, I believe.
It burned down many times.
Many times. Our city burned down many times, but it was because of those fires that we were able to really industrialize our Castries Basin and bring about new things. Because sometimes when you travel through the Caribbean, and while it is beautiful, you really realize that they still have many colonial structures, many of the old style buildings, and that is because they were never really forced to create, they were never forced to rebuild. So the idea of an apocalypse bringing room for creation, well, we see that many times. We study it in geography when they tell us that volcanic soil is more fertile. Volcanic soil brings nutrients to land that may have been barren.
And minerals.
And you really see that through our own Castries. You walk through Castries and you have all of these modern buildings, you have all of these new structures, and you can see the part of Castries that really was not affected by the fire compared to the parts that were burned down completely and they had to start from scratch, where they kind of got rid of the colonial style buildings and they brought in the modern buildings. So I do believe there's merit to that, where you say that an apocalyptic situation can bring in room for change, and it does help those who do not benefit from the status quo, because I guess a modern apocalypse is revolution.
Well, not only that, we could also think of it within the terms of natural disaster.
Definitely.
Like the pandemic,
all of that.
Hurricanes and so on.
All of these things, it really, what I would say does it gives you a clean slate. So you can start afresh, you can start new.
Right.
So that's how I feel about the question.
I suppose taking it more so in the perspective and just in the thought process, the philosophy that can be derived from it is the acceptance of pain or discomfort in an effort towards progress or in an effort towards healing. Where a lot of the time a critique that can be levied against I won't go as far as to say the Caribbean, but at least St. Lucia locally, is that our people are very reactionary. Yes. where the first news is the only news. Whoever they hear it from, be it friend, be it family, be it news outlet, once they hear a piece of information, it becomes the fact so long as it's the first thing they hear. Now, with that aspect, and with the lack of, I suppose, investigation, the lack of pushing and the agency to control yourself into moving in the direction of investigating, to learning, to find the information, it's the fear of leaving the comfort zone. It's a fear of having to put in the effort and having to put in the strain and the struggle of investigate. And that's not, of course, it's not applicable to everyone. The 4 people here, I can say it's definitely not. But you look at a lot of people, and when individuals within that society, this society, put in that effort when they ask the questions, when they say, who'd you hear that from? Or they say, is it verified by X, is it verified by Y? Have you heard an announcement of that sort? A lot of them get defensive. It becomes an act of, are you against me and my principles? Are you against how I conduct myself? Are you against my beliefs? When their beliefs are simply the first thing that they hear. Going off of the creation story of St. Lucia, I'm also an advocate, in my belief, of radical change. Absolute radical change. In the sense of, you have to take the steps back. You have to take the 2 steps back to create the room to make the steps forward. You have to endure the discomfort of trying. You have to endure the discomfort of being behind, of first stopping and analyzing, I am in a position where I do not know. I'm in a position where I could know more. I am behind. There are lots of people who do know. There are people who are trying. It'll be difficult to get to that point, but this is where I am, and that is where I want to be. It takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of strain, and it does have a lot of hurt in it to sit yourself down and realize where you are and how far behind where you want to be. But that is the way to get to where you want to be. As we've said multiple times, and of course as many people in the Caribbean say, to emancipate yourself from mental slavery. To get there, first you have to fully acknowledge that you are within mental slavery, that you are bound, that you are keeping yourself back from a place that you could reasonably be. There is no part of this that is unattainable to anyone in St. Lucia. Everyone can make it to a degree, to a point where they're more informed. It may not be as informed as everyone else, but to the most that you can be informed, to the outlets that you have ways to get information. You have access to things, you have access to multiple sources. You can ask questions. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to question, you're allowed to push back. You're allowed to take your time, you get a piece of information to verify, to ask, to motivate yourself into a direction of saying, is there more that I can do? Is there more that I can learn? Where can I find it? What can I do? So taking the creation story, it seems more so like a blueprint to what should be. To have that destruction, that eruption of pain, that eruption of discomfort, displacement, everything coming together, hot and rising, as you said, it was the magma rising, until the sea cools it down, calms itself down, and orients itself in place as the island had.
All right.
My page looks very much like my mind right now. And my mind is everywhere. I think to continue, in order to continue, you have to literally do that. Just like keep going. But, okay, that's why I said my page is very much like my mind. So my head will be down for this one. In order to continue, you must continue. And when you simply pick up and continue, as many St. Lucians, many former enslaved people needed to, you just have to keep going with the everyday at a time kind of thing. And when you do an everyday at a time kind of thing, you're prone to just being distracted with those everyday things. You're prone to just being distracted.
Not distracted. I would contend that the additional thing would be the distraction. You must focus on your survival. You understand?
You have to. Yes, survival. That was a big one. Survival. I can't wait to get to that one. But anyway, survival. You must continue with an everyday basis. It's not that you're thinking of this new hurricane that comes. You have to try and feed yourself and keep going. And in places where you have to just continue, you have to continue to survive. Something like sufficient and efficient planning for survival, for longevity. Those things that very much are a priority to us now. These things are not in play as a priority then when you're simply just trying to survive. The foundation or the structure of things we never started off solid. And to bring that into physical context, to bring that into, let me paint a picture for you kind of way. When you read, it was one of the earliest writings encompassing St. Lucia entirely, St. Lucia Historical, Statistical and Descriptive, 1834, I believe. And they describe castries and it's thatched roofs and it's galvanized and it's this, and you notice a stark difference between the bourgeoisie at that time. There were two sides of castries, the bourgeoisie at that time and then the proletariat as well. So you see the thatched roofs, those things. And then we're looking at things like today, how castries is always flooding and how people are being affected by that, how we'd say the environment beating us. But it's an example of when you just have to go to stay alive. You're just waking up every day and you have to do it. And to other people's eyes, to more privileged eyes, you say, so why wouldn't they just? Why don't they just? When you're just trying to live every single day at a time, something like longevity, it's not really, you're just trying to live. Mm-hmm. And we started at that with this unstable, this unfair kind of leveling. And that has always been unfortunate. Let me try and get where the other point was.
Although it depends on at what point you take as your starting point. But
I stick with the starting point. Emancipation.
I'll get into that in a moment.
Yes. So something like violence and rapid change, which you brought up. Mm-hmm. Rapid change. You said rapid change. My brows went up because to me change is never ever rapid. It's always very slow. And in terms of violence, I think violence is ubiquitous, almost existent in every society. In order to move forward, I liked in theory in your question you gave
the creation story?
Yes, the person.
Oh, Suzanne Cesar?
Yes, you gave her little description and her comparison between this and that. I will sit with that later. And it's beautiful. I'm sure I will get it a little bit later. But I put unique with a question mark. Something about formation for me. It just didn't. Maybe for the other questions. But anyway, so. In order to stop being distracted and to plan ahead, wait, no. Oh gosh, Krista, I told you all my page.
It's okay, that's no problem.
Stop being distracted and plan ahead, survival, longevity, those things are difficult. And moving past thatched roofs and those things to bring it into a modern context, something like insurance and documentation and infrastructure, if we're looking at our distractions, when you're just trying to live a day-to-day life and you're trying to be this for your lineage and you're trying to be that, but you started off at a disadvantageous footing that is much lower than other people, and you're trying to tap into longevity, you're trying to tap into survival, but you're doing it all. You're one of the first. If you're not the first, you're one of the first, and it's not exactly obvious, and you're trying to figure out stuff like things that keep the bourgeoisie in the bourgeoisie, that keep them benefiting from our instability, those things, and they're difficult and they're hard. That's why change is never rapid to me, and I chuckle at rapid change. And in the same context with change being slow, that's with solving things like violence. That's why so many different aspects of the difficulties in our society, they still persist, and we're still trying to attack them because change is very slow. But we must stop being distracted and plan ahead, and that's in every context.
All right. Now, there
sense.
were a few things I wanted to mention, although I don't want to take too much time. So one thing that I will say is that, you know, a lot of the times revolution is glamorized. However, we must always remember that they're very costly when it comes to life. Even, I must be careful how I say this. I remain an ally to the Haitian people. But of course, it is very true that ever since the Haitian Revolution, they have been paying. They have been made to pay. In fact, not just paying metaphorically, they have been paying actual money. And of course,
Call it what it
it's
is.
not.
Reparation.
They have been. Is that what it is? Though they have been paying reparation.
They finished, right? Well, through
You know,
the loan by the United.
I'm not even sure. But right. So these are the costs that come with revolution as it would happen. But yes, change does happen. It does happen incrementally at times. Although when certain people want revolution, they ensure to make it happen. So we must always keep our options open.
Perhaps it's destruction that's fast.
Well, yes, destruction, disruption, and so on. All right, so I don't want to just like take hard turns. So let's go to I think ecofeminism, which was a point that was sort of brought up, although not in that not by name. So Senusha being characterized as female, as feminine, is there anything there that you all want to elaborate on?
Going back to what I said about people coming here and looking for bacchanal, and I only realized a couple years ago, I think bacchanal comes from the Greeks. I find it funny that Senusha is categorized as a woman, and then in recent times our carnival has exploded and we've seen a lot of influence coming in from the outside, and it seems that the focus of carnival has moved a little bit from the cultural significance of it, and it's being brought onto the women aspect, which is jumping off of what you said about people coming to the Caribbean in search of women. And I really feel like that speaks to the ecofeminism of it all, bringing women into the conversation, bringing the name Mother Nature into the conversation.
Yep.
And when I think about climate justice in the same sphere, I feel like it's protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Although you cannot call nature them, but
Can't you?
We can do whatever we want.
maybe you can. So protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Animals cannot speak for themselves, the trees cannot speak for themselves. And then when you consider that people call it Mother Nature, it's almost as if they categorize nature as a woman because she cannot speak for herself. Women cannot speak for themselves. So I feel like at its root, climate justice is feminism, because you're speaking up for the underprivileged, which is what feminism was originally supposed to be about, giving those who don't have a voice a voice. And I just don't feel like women should be taken out of the conversation, not when you consider the Caribbean a woman where people go and exploit, not when you consider nature, Mother Nature, another feminine metaphor where people go and exploit. So you see it in every sphere, that in a way you could almost say that, oh my God, I had it there, I had it right there.
Okay. Yeah,
But does anybody else want to jump in?
Because I'm glad you mentioned Mother Nature, because
Right.
when we talk about ecotourism, when we talk about ecofeminism, right? We talk about ecofeminism. I was like, it's not in the context that St. Lucia is the only land named after. No. I was like, because land in general is something that we take from and we hardly ever give back. And it's something I have beef with us in St. Lucia, because it's like there's this disparity. We always take from it, whether or not it's tourism, that's in the context of tourism, or just us keeping it clean. We take from it, and agriculture, those things, we take from it and we hardly ever give anything back. That's what I brought up before with colonization. But like, what are we giving back to Mother Nature really? But we'll talk about it a little bit later.
Right. So these were some amazing points that were made. To very quickly touch on the point of disparity, I would just like to make sure that we remember that there were pull factors as well. There was a reason why people found themselves leaving where they were from to come to the Caribbean. So even when we see that we started off at a disequilibrium with us at the bottom, that's taking a starting point at a later stage in history after we had been exploited. But more on this when we get back. We'll be heading into a break now. Thank you.
What's in the food you're eating? Do you really even know? All the chemicals and hormones used to accelerate their growth. All the artificial flavoring, sweeteners and colors too. We consume and we don't spare a thought for the damage that they'll do. No, think about the children. Think about the children. How will we save them? Chemicals and GMOs are not the solution. Use organic and join.
Excessive agrochemical use, additives, and genetically modified foods are harmful to health and the environment. Join the good food revolution. Grow, buy, and consume organic. A message from Rise St. Lucia and the Ministry of Sustainable Development with funding from the GEF Small Grants Program, UNDP.
The good food revolution.
All right, welcome back to the youth panel discussion on environmentalism. So where we left off was on the matter of ecofeminism as it relates to the Caribbean perceptions of it, as well as exploitation and so on that goes on within the Caribbean and similar regions. So where we left off was speaking on disparity. I think I managed to wrap it up quickly before we got into the break, but if I must rehash it. So again, Krista mentioned starting off at a point of, disadvantage and so on. And perhaps if we think of it from independence, maybe that may be the case. But again, when the ships sailed in, they sailed in looking for something, looking for someone. And they took it, they definitely took it, which is especially why we advocate now for reparations and for these kinds of movements. So, although I would love for us to continue talking about ecofeminism, and not to say we have to stop because this question is very related to that matter, but I just wanted to segue into another question, which is sugar production in the Caribbean and other industries that employed slavery as their means of attaining labor. It saw the abuse and exploitation of both land and labor in the Caribbean. So do you see room for solidarity between us as a population of mostly descendants of formerly enslaved persons and the environment? So again, since land and labor were exploited at the same time as one in different ways, do we not think that that's a means of going forward and undoing that legacy of that joint exploitation?
I have a big smile on my face because something dawned on me. It's almost like only one of those two was emancipated. You mentioned land and you mentioned labor, and we gained we're celebrating. It's a month of emancipation, yeah. But then when did we ever emancipate the land? We spoke about this a little bit earlier. I brought it up when this theory almost like we put on the boots of the colonizer because in order to catch up with the world and create some form of footing, and we're still running behind, we're still in the race running and we're at the back.
And we're marching at the same pace as them.
Sure. And we had to put on those boots, and we're almost like colonizer because as soon as well, I mean, like we said, also the strings, they're still there. The people might not obviously be in the front saying this, that, and the other, but the strings are still there. It was very powerful strings. The land never really got emancipated. Once we put on those boots, we just continued. They know us for being a monocrop economy. So when we go into agriculture, and agriculture still has a big hold on our economy and our peoples, we go into agriculture and then the land never really got a break, because when we transition from agriculture into tourism, the land's still not getting a break. We bring it, land has always been this sought after commodity, and although we may not have been advertised, then people cop their land when land was not land prices as we know it now. But they're seeing buying paradise. They can buy a piece of paradise, so that's under the pitons. They can buy a piece of paradise and come down here. The land never really got emancipated. we keep using her and bringing it back to the ecotourism point, because I'm very passionate. The ecofeminism, the ecofeminism point, bringing it back to that, we take and we hardly ever give back. And if we are to take, if we talk about feminism and we split it in half, and the environment is the woman's context, and we're the other one in the context, then it's almost like we're using this sense of weaponized incompetence. We know about climate change, we know about natural disasters, we know about these things. The seaweed is washing up on our shores and inconveniencing all of us. And we're crying every day. We're talking about this, we're talking about that. We are upset here, there, and everywhere. But we always take from it, and we hardly ever give at the same rate. And we're not creating laws to help try and stamp that out. And even before,
The legal system defends it.
we need to stop being distracted, like the other question that we answered. Stop being distracted and plan ahead. And it doesn't take an activist to come and, well, I mean, let's do more protests, but I'm always here for protests. It doesn't take an activist to come on a talk show and quarrel to everybody and say, we need to do this. People have been doing that for more than 50 years now. People have been doing that, not only in St. Lucia. And we keep saying that we're one of the most vulnerable because of what we are. That's the same superior and inferiority, the third world. They can buy paradise, but they're not living here. When they see we take our beaches, and that's the one thing, people, the fishermen, they rely on us. It's us that's being disadvantaged. And our cries, they will never head because they're so far. They go back to their concrete jungle. Whatever issues, that's their issues. They have media focusing on it, and we just have to deal with our seaweed-filled beaches, our castries that will always flood. It don't have to always flood, but we're too distracted and we're not planning ahead. Our castries that will always flood, our crops that are getting diseases, and the fact that we cannot properly supply ourselves if another COVID probably come and take us out, because people that like to eat wape. Sorry, go on.
I find it hard to believe there's any boy who doesn't like wape.
Choselle, you like
Doesn't
wape?
Of course.
Okay, good. We good?
Of course.
Yes, let's continue.
When I'm looking at it with the relation that was established in colonial times between land and labor, where almost the value of one was determined by the other. If you didn't have a workforce that could adequately reap the crop, then the land itself wasn't worth anything if you can't bear anything from it, if you can't exploit it adequately, I suppose. And the labor, likewise, wouldn't be of any use or any value if it, because that's how it was regarded at the time. It wasn't people, it wasn't if he or if she or if they, if it
Cattle.
couldn't, yes.
Chattel.
If it couldn't exploit on their behalf as well. Now, what had happened is, since primarily we were brought for the purpose of labor, where it was hand in hand, where one man's hand was for the purpose of taking from the soil, putting in to take, putting in to grow, only to reap. If it is that we were only there for that, which at the start is what it was, where the production of the sugar, beforehand tobacco, but sugar mostly in the Caribbean, what it established was a valuation system based solely upon exploitation, based solely upon what you could do with the task and role you were given. And I feel like that stuck, even as we expanded, and even in the post-emancipation landscape, where we've been given the freedom to create more rules, to have more industry, to have more innovation, to have other fields. So, we have sports, we have the arts, we have finances, we have many things going, but I feel like the mentality from the original instance and the original scenario that was labor equaling land in the soil for the sugar, that never left, where your worth was determined upon how well you could do the work you were given. Not the work that you decided upon yourself, not the purpose that you affixed to yourself, the role you were given. And I feel like it shows a lot in the society where people now are simply in the mindset of following the status quo. I was born, I have these circumstances, I have a role that has been given to me, I shall not seek to do anything more, I shall not put myself in a position where I have to enact change, or I have to put myself in a position where I have more responsibilities, or I have more to do, even if it's for the benefit of the society or for the community. If this role has been given to me, I shall do it, because that is all. The role is on me, and it's perpetuated. It's a lot by the older generations, even by the younger ones. I have been given this. The people before me said, if you question your position, I told you to do it. If I told you to do it, then do it.
What I might add though is, aside from mentality, I think it comes from being made a beast of burden, and that was actually a term that I got introduced to by Aishan Hutchinson during his lecture, so to speak, like earlier this year during January, which was a CDF event actually. So enslavement made, black people, enslaved people, beasts of burden. And of course, if that's what you know, and it's not all we know, because history shows that we resisted, history shows that even outside of revolutions and revolts, there were everyday resistances, right? But at the end of the day, when your history is being a beast of burden, you may not know how to exist outside of that context, because literally to exist is the opposite of being a beast of burden, right? So yes, you can carry on.
No, but yes, I love the point that you're making about beast of burden, because truly it was a fact of the labor not being the labor force. The tools in their hand were not the tools that were being regarded by the colonial powers. They themselves, the labor, were the tools. Any animal, any stick, any axe, any trowel, anything, the labor was equivalent to them. If it is damaged, it is damaged. If she is damaged, it is damaged. If the child is damaged, it is damaged.
And if it is emancipated, then we need reparations. We being the colonizing forces,
yes.
Just to be very clear.
Yes.
We got reparations.
Which they got and we didn't. But anyways.
Yet
We will. When you look at it, even when it expanded during colonial times, where the rules expanded, where slaves were given rules in the milling houses, or they were given rules as drivers, it was still based upon the efficiency of the rule they were given. It was not based upon personal ambition, because it's not, again, to blame the slaves. It was all they were afforded. At the time, there was no room to grow beyond that. As Faith was mentioning earlier, that it's fairly difficult. She had made a mention that it's difficult to both live and survive at the same time. Because at the point in time where the colonial era was taking place, survival was the basis. Survival was the struggle. Of course, we had a lot of rebellions, and we had a lot of people fighting against it, doing their little, what little they could to change the landscape they were in and better it for everyone around them. But you look now as well, even with the expansion, that it is still, whether forced or that they haven't taken it back for themselves yet, the belief that the rules that are afforded are the only ones that are available. You can create the rule that you want. If it doesn't exist, you can create it. And you don't have to do it alone. I'm not saying you, the individual, you, the person part of the community, you, the person living in the island. If I cannot do something, I can go to like-minded people. I could go to people of influence. I could go to people that understand the benefit of the proposition and come together, and we can create the position that we want.
Okay, so what I wanted to touch on when you gave us the question was that you said, do we think that there should be solidarity between the land and the people? And what I wanted to say is that for so many people, there's a big disconnect between nature and how they interact with it. For example, they walk on paved streets, or they purchase meat from supermarkets that has already been cut, processed, all of these things, and they don't really see that there was life there at a point. It's almost stripped away, like you buy steak that has already been processed, and then you cannot even see the connection between the cow and the piece of meat on your plate. But in the Caribbean, we don't have that. And you can also see it in our food, because we never had excess, we never had surplus in order to throw away these things, like the pig's feet or the pig's snout. So you can kind of see that that meat came from an animal. And what I wanted to say was that from slavery times, after we were emancipated, it was the land that was feeding the people. It was because of the land that they were able to survive. Nobody gave us a helping hand. It was because they were planting crops, they were reaping from the land that we are sitting here today, we are talking today. They had to survive in spite of. And I feel like that's one of the reasons we should have a strong connection between climate justice and people in the Caribbean, because all of this should create a passion. It should inspire us to advocate for the land, like I have been saying, because at one point it was the land that was protecting us, it was the land that was sustaining us. So now I feel like it's our opportunity to give back and allow ourselves to protect our land Yeah.
All right, thank you guys so much. We have an entire, I could even show you all, we have an entire page of questions left over that we never got to address, unfortunately. Again, just to ensure that, the best narrative is left, or well, not best, but the most complete narrative is left with viewers. I just wanted to touch on a few things very quickly. So I think it was mentioned at some point that we don't emancipate the environment, but we do. And I think that was sort of my inspiration for coming up with this decolonial environmentalism panel, which is that even though we add these colonials and isms and really big jumbled up words, there is more than enough language within the Creole language. There's more than enough examples within the St. Lucian and Creole context and experience of people being directly connected with nature, right? It's just that, that's just our everyday. So it's not to say that, that's their topic all the time. When you feel sick and you want to make spiced tea, that is your connection with nature that you got from your ancestors. Mm-hmm. And it's just all we're doing is just making it a topic. That's more or less it. So we not only emancipate the environment, but we are emancipated by it. We are healed by it all the time.
We live through it.
Yes, and we live through it, as Faith said. And maybe more or less all this is just ensuring the connection between the youth and the elders, who are probably the youth are not so accustomed. The elders are much more accustomed to living within the earth, living within the world, whereas the youth live in a global context which is dominated by particular global actors. But yes, thank you guys so much. I'm already feeling a sense of missing this. As I said yesterday, we have so many questions. Maybe I might make them available and we could have some discussions later on. But I just want to thank you guys for coming. You guys are brilliant. For Lenora, she was supposed to speak on food sovereignty. She would have been so useful, and she had a lot of insights in that regard, but unfortunately she couldn't be here. So I just want to leave you all with this year's theme for Emancipation, which is understanding the past to create a pathway for the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to interact with you all on the panel later on. Bye-bye.